the average person only stays on a submarine for 3, maybe 4 years tops until they go take a shore assignment somewhere, because you can only spend so much time on a submarine before you go.
Because you're gonna need some sun at a lower point.
Yeah.
For sure.
So it's this, and compare that to, say, a civilian nuclear power plant where, everyone's been there for decades. You get a job at a nuclear power plant and you're going to be there for 35 years. So, so it's an older workforce. It's a more experienced workforce. Whereas on a submarine, we got a bunch of kids doing this, and it's not even like
egos and shit.
Yeah, and it's not even like they're doing it for a long time. So it's not like the most senior guy, and I'm not talking about rank, I'm just talking about knowledge of the submarine, might have been there for 4 years.
Many different groups of people. It was not a whole team working to make this boat go forward. But I think it's because of the size. I think it's like a huge city. I go to Montreal, people don't give a shit about nobody, but my city, we're 8,000. I go to a store, people hold the door, say hi. I think since you guys are like confined and in a small space, like might as well get along and figure it out and move on. So I think that
people.
So I think that's how the blueprint of teaching the guys were made there, because you're stuck with these guys. You can't even throw him overboard because you're underwater. So you got to deal with these people.
That's funny. Yeah, you're right. And I will tell you, if you deploy anyone you've deployed with, so you've done 6-7 months on a submarine with, you probably know as well as your own brother or sister. Like, you just know everything about them. Or another metaphor is like if you're at a restaurant and the waitress comes out with this big tray of drinks and she spills them all. Typically what you'll see is a group of people come over to help clean everything up, make sure she's okay, and then get back to work. And at no point is there like a discussion of like, what the hell happened? How did this happen? I mean,
that's so true.
Experienced enough? Was the floor slippery? Does she need to put less drinks on there? Again, thank you for your research. It's appreciated. It tells me how seriously you take this show, so thank you.
I appreciate people that take the time to come on the show. So the least I could do is do a good research in that person.
You did. That's awesome.
We'll completely misunderstand about the life inside of a submarine, because you ain't seeing the sun every day there. So what happens under there that most people are never gonna understand their life
is to go out in the middle of the ocean and be undetected in case they get the order to launch. That's important, but it was boring to me. Like, I wanted to do more mission-oriented stuff. But to answer your question, the submarine could stay submerged for damn near ever.
Oh yeah, that's what I noticed.
Yeah, we come up to get some fresh air. It's something called ventilating, where you can just kind of refresh the air that's in the submarine because it's all recycled normally.
Yeah.
Get some message traffic, download some emails, and all that's done at periscope depth. So the submarine still appears to be submerged, but we just stick a couple antennas up out of the water with 18 students, and we graduated 4. And it was hard academically, but that's not why we lost most people. Most people were lost over integrity violations. And I mean, like, copying someone's homework, or being late to class and lying about why you were late. I mean, any breach of integrity, you were just gone. And so, that's kind of number one. We rely, and the reason that's so important is because everyone's job on a submarine
is important. Exactly.
Every single person, right?
Exactly.
And so if it's 2:00 in the morning and the mechanic down in engine room lower level has a decision to make, there's nobody around. One way would be a shortcut and you could get it done in 2 minutes. The other way would be a pain in the ass and would take 20 minutes. We want the guy who will do it the right way, take the 20 minutes. And if for some reason he believes that's not the right answer, then he needs to raise his hand and get a supervisor involved and make a deliberate decision about what we're going to do. Oh, man, you're good at your job, man. Another great question.
Well, I appreciate it.
Well, most engineers will tell you that A nuclear submarine is the most complex piece of machinery ever built by man, even more so than the space shuttle. And
Wow.
primarily, it's not just what it can do. It's the fact that so much was jammed into a small space, right? I mean, like every system that your airlines and your seawater lines are all intertwined, and you're constantly having to climb behind. Like you wouldn't believe the places that you have to climb into to operate that submarine.
How tight it is, you mean?
Yeah, like if you're a
Wow.
mechanic on a submarine, you're climbing in. Behind valves and pipes that looks like no human being can fit behind, but you have to anyway. People say, "What movies did you watch? What books did you read?" And I'm like, zero.
I had no time for that.
Zero. I was like, yeah. I mean, I brought some books with me, and I read the first page of the first book dozens of times. In the submarine, you cannot have a miscommunication. You just can't. If someone says, "Hey, go open that valve," and you go shut that valve, bad things could happen, right?
Mhm.
So on the submarine, we have this kind of weird way of talking, and any order has to be repeated back, right? So if I say, let's say I'm working in the engine room, and
They
I
do
tell
the same in a plane. After an officer says something, the other one repeats it just to confirm that is good,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, so and it can get pretty complex. Meaning, let me just give you an example. Most nuclear evolutions are controlled from the control room in the engine room, right? And there's an officer in there who's in charge, and then there's somebody on the phones. There's sound-powered phones, just the headphones and the talker, and they're talking to the space. Let's say engine room lower level.
Okay.
And you're going through a procedure, and the officer controls the procedure. Let's say the next step is open charging valve 37, right? So he'll say to the phone talker 2, engine room lower level, open charging 37. And then the phone talker will turn around and say, 2, engine room lower level, open charging 37. And then he says, engine room lower level, engine room lower level maneuvering, open charging 37. Then they'll repeat that back and say, open charging 37I. They'll open charging 37, then they'll say charging 37 is open, and the maneuvering will say charging 37 is open, and then he'll say engine room still watch, charging 37 is open. That's for one valve. Right? So the listening part.
It's to make sure there's no error.
That's
I
right.
think
That's
yeah,
right. There just can't be. There just can't be. When I got out of the military, and I knew I had to, like you're no longer on a submarine, but even with the knowledge of that, I still sometimes get surprised how sensitive people are in the civilian world, right? I remember one time
for sure.
it was like my first job as a civilian, and something didn't go right. So I called a team meeting, and it was pretty direct. But I didn't think I was mean. And like on a scale of 1 to 10, I was probably at a 3, or at least I thought I was. But then a couple people afterwards were like, "You can't talk to us like that." And I was like what? Like 2 people quit, and I was just like, holy shit. Like my first shower on a submarine, I came out of the shower and all my clothes and towels were gone. And then I tried to get to my rack, and somebody had locked it. And then all the other berthing areas were locked, so I couldn't like grab someone else's towel.
Wow.
And they were just fucking with me, and they wanted to see how I would react. And I remember thinking, like, I'm standing there naked, and I remember thinking, like, all right, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. So I went back to the engine room naked, and I was like, all right, who's going to give me back my clothes, or we're going to wrestle for it? And they were immediately like, okay, here's your clothes. Just go away.
Welcome back on the Rumbling Facts podcast, your number one destination to challenge the status quo, dissect the system, and think outside the box, people, to extract raw, unfiltered wisdom in every episode, no matter how it rumbles your perspective, because this is where our guests' uncomfortable truths collides with our reality to fast track our learning in life. This is where critical thinking is promoted and where our guests and our fans get pushed to think outside their comfort zone. I'm your host, Sam, aka DjRetsam, on all music platforms. We're at 225,000 streams on my music on all music platforms available. I really appreciate you guys for checking the music and the podcast. It's been a hell of a ride this last year. And so whether if you're rebuilding yourself up, growing your business, or fixing your relationship, or waking up to the lies that you've been sold, this conversation is the conversation you didn't even know you needed. This is a podcast that you probably didn't even fucking know existed. So subscribe to a goddamn podcast and like the video. It really helps. Today, we have an incredible guest that I'm honored to have, Matt DiGeronimo. Matt's career speaks for itself. A seasoned veteran with years in the service in U.S. Navy, Matt has spent a significant part of his career as a submarine officer, navigating one of the most intense and high-pressure environments, and literally high pressure because you're underwater, people. Now a leadership strategist, Matt expertise continues to make an impact, helping individuals and organizations build high-performance teams and achieve operational excellence. His work extends beyond the military service, blending his experience to offer invaluable insights into what makes a great leader and how to operate effectively under stress. We are truly grateful to have Matt on the show today. His depth and experience and leadership wisdom make him a fucking perfect guest for our audience. And I can't wait to get into this. Thank you, Matt, for your service, and we are honored to have you on the show. How you doing?
I'm well, Sam. That was quite an introduction. Thank you. I'm humbled by that. Thank you.
I appreciate that. But first off, can you tell us a bit what motivated you to be like, wow, I want to protect my country and join the Navy? Because that's very admirable.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was not the type of kid playing with ships in the bathtub or anything like that, right? But I grew up in New Jersey, and I wasn't ready to, go sit in a cubicle somewhere for the rest of my life. Wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. And so instead of pursuing something that would make me unhappy, I just said, well, I'll get the hell out of New Jersey and, do something different. I figured I would be in the Navy for a few years, but I really liked it. So I stayed in, and then 9/11 happened, which, kind of remotivated my patriotism. I see the world slightly different now with, the years that have passed since 9/11, but I think 9/11 kind of sucked me in for
sealed the deal for a lot of you. A lot of people went into the Army like close to there, because there was just, instead of just sitting at home doing nothing, and you see that happen, and you're like, man, I want to do a difference. And that's quite incredible. Is there something that attracted you to submarines instead of the surface ships? It's like a lot of people just want to be on those big ships, but you fuck off. I want to be underwater. Is there a reason for this?
Yeah, it's a good question. So a couple things. One is, I've always been good at math and science. My degree is in nuclear engineering, and although it's not required to have a degree in nuclear engineering, it's definitely a math and science intensive community.
Okay.
So that kind of fit my skill set, and then it kind of fit my personality also, because smaller crew. I like the clandestine missions. I just the sort of off the radar, if you will, and just kind of doing our own thing. I liked it a lot.
How deep are you guys normally? Like the average of depth that the submarine travels at?
Yeah, a couple 100 feet.
Okay. And I learned that the difference between a nuclear submarine and a submarine. Well, I would have thought, because I'm stupid, like most people, I would have thought, okay, well, the submarine with nuclear, well, he has nuclear bombs on board. Well, that's not near exactly what that means. That means because it's a nuclear propulsion. That's why it's called like that. So
So it generates our electricity and our propulsion.
okay, that's it. So you and that submarine compared to a normal submarine doesn't need to go back to the surface as often. So
No. So a couple things. So one is the United States has two types of submarines. They're both nuclear. There's the fast attack submarine, which I was on.
okay.
And then the ballistic missile submarines, which I was not on, and they do carry nuclear weapons.
Okay.
But that's really their only mission, is to go out in the middle of the ocean and be undetected in case they get the order to launch. That's important, but it was boring to me. Like, I wanted to do more mission oriented stuff. But to answer your question, the submarine could stay submerged for damn near ever.
Oh yeah, that's what I noticed.
Yeah, we come up to get some fresh air. It's something called ventilating, where you can just kind of refresh the air that's in the submarine because it's all recycled normally.
Yeah.
Get some message traffic, download some emails, and all that's done at periscope depth. So the submarine still appears to be submerged, but we just stick a couple antennas up out of the water.
That's what we see, like in movies, a little stick there.
That's right.
Okay.
And that little stick is an antenna typically, or a periscope, and that enables us to communicate with satellites.
Wow. Now, what's something most people completely misunderstand about the life inside of a submarine? Because you ain't seeing the sun every day there. So what happens under there that most people are never going to understand their life?
Yeah, great question. A couple things. One is it's not boring, right? So I get all the time people will say, like, I've been on multiple 7-month deployments, and people will say, what movies did you watch? What books did you read? And I'm like, zero.
I had no time for that.
Zero. I was like, yeah. I mean, I brought some books with me, and I read the first page of the first book dozens of times, because then I just fall asleep. Because we're all exhausted all the time. Ideally, even on a deployment, we have maybe 130 people. But if you were concerned about people's rest, you'd need more people than that. We don't have space for that many people.
Okay,
and as a consequence, there's a lot of work for everyone to do. And I think a lot of people make the assumption that we're just kind of hanging out underwater,
chilling,
playing cards, watching movies, and that's just not true. The other thing that comes up a lot, and I've dealt with this a lot in the civilian world since I retired, people will say to me from time to time, yeah, I mean, you had a lot of leadership experience in the military, but in the military, people just have to do what you say, and that makes it easier. And I always say, like, you really don't know what you're talking about. Like, there's a little bit of that. I mean, at the end of the day, if a senior officer gives you an order, you need to follow it.
Mm-hmm.
But the good leaders on a submarine were never the ones that relied on their rank to get things done. Once those hatches shut, you're just a bunch of guys in a tube, and you really have to earn your respect, and the rank just doesn't do it, right? You have
because you're all a team at the end, protecting each other, though.
Yeah, 100%. If you could be a high-ranking person, and if you're a knucklehead, or you don't know what you're doing, or you're a bad leader, it's not going to be fun for you. It's just, and you don't have, and I say a good leader, I'm not suggesting anything other than humility, empathy, subject matter expertise, and just an understanding that leadership is a blessing. And if anytime I've been given the responsibility to lead people, I look at that as those are my bosses, right? So I try much harder to please my team than I do my boss, right? If I can keep my team, and I say happy, but that's not always possible. But if I can get my team to respect me, and to know that I wouldn't ask them to do anything that I either haven't done myself or wouldn't do myself, and just respect them as people, and as human beings, adults with sort of dignity and respect. Yeah, that's all that's required. And if you want to be a great leader, obviously there's nuances associated with that, and there's thousands of books read on the subject. But for the most part, what I just described is kind of what you need to earn some respect on a submarine.
When you look at like planes, for example, we obligate the planes to have two pilots at all times because you need both of them to really fly this plane effectively. How many really people you need to drive this submarine effectively as well? Probably way more.
Yeah, so I think if you're just talking about the control room,
Yeah,
because there's a lot of different pockets.
yeah, for sure.
There's sonar, there's radar, there's fire control, then the engine room and the diesel and all this other stuff. But if you just talk about the control room, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be about the minimum. Usually we have more than, well, again, it depends on who. There's navigation, which is kind of part of the team, and then, but in terms of just making the submarine move, you have somebody who controls the rudder, which is sort of your left and right.
Yeah, like
then
on a
there's
plane.
someone who controls the fair water or the bow planes, which makes the ship go up or down. And then you have a guy sitting behind those two who's responsible for overseeing them.
Okay.
Because those guys in the seats are typically the youngest guys on the submarine.
Okay.
Because all they're doing is this, right?
Yeah.
So, but there's a lot to it that a senior guy has to sit over there. And then to the left of them, there's a guy called the chief of the watch. And what he does is he manages all our tanks, because you can imagine, or if you haven't thought about it, like every time you fill up a tank, you're changing the buoyancy of the submarine. And so that could be just like the tank that the bathrooms are connected to, right? Or it could be the water that we drink, or the water for the reactor. And then the same thing is true with all our air banks, right? Because you have to release the air so we can breathe it. And so it's a whole science project unto itself. And there's that guy over there. And then the officer of the deck is the officer who's in charge of the whole ship. And he's the one who gives the orders to that group of what to do.
Wow. It's crazy because we would think as civilians, because a plane, you're in midair, everything like touchy, you're flying, and let's say you let go of those controls, you crash quite fast. So a lot of people, I'm sure, would think that maybe you would need less people to drive a submarine, since there's just nothing can really happen. Like that's what most people would think there. But I knew that that ship is way more complex than a plane. There, wow.
Yeah, most engineers will tell you that a nuclear submarine is the most complex piece of machinery ever built by man, even more so than the space shuttle. And primarily, it's not just what it can do. It's the fact that so much was jammed into a small space, right? I mean, like every system that, your airlines and your seawater lines are all intertwined, and you're constantly having to climb behind. Like you wouldn't believe the places that you have to climb into to operate that submarine.
How tight it is, you mean?
Yeah, like if you're a mechanic on a submarine, you're climbing in behind valves and pipes that looks like no human being can fit behind, but you have to anyway.
Wow.
It's tight.
For sure. You've risen through the ranks as a lieutenant commander at Dan. How was that? And was it hard, like, to demark yourself compared to others, like to show?
It's a good question, but I started as an enlisted sailor. I was an electronics technician, and then got picked up for an officer program, where I earned a bachelor's of science degree in nuclear engineering, came back as an officer. And so I got to experience life in the military, both as an enlisted guy, as an officer. And I think that helped me become a better officer, because I was able to empathize. I'd been there, right? I cleaned the toilets, I mopped the floors, I've done all of that. And then, once so you get a little bit more respect from the guys, like kind of right off the bat, but you still have to earn it, right? Because there's plenty of knuckleheads who are
Yeah, yeah.
prior enlisted guys who still make crappy officers.
And
So
you're mostly all young too, like around 25, around in all that shit there.
yeah, you did your research, man.
Ah, damn right I
Yeah,
did.
yeah, you did. Yeah, I think that's the average age, 25, and it's if you think about it, it's even a little bit more complex than that because the average person only stays on a submarine for 3, maybe 4 years tops until they go take a shore assignment somewhere. Because you can only spend so much time on a submarine before you go
Because
go
you're gonna
nutty.
need some sun at a certain point.
Yeah, yeah.
For sure.
So it's this, and compare that to say a civilian nuclear power plant where everyone's been there for decades. You get a job at a nuclear power plant and you're going to be there for 35 years. So so it's an older workforce. It's a more experienced workforce. Whereas on a submarine, we got a bunch of kids doing this, and it's not
With
even like
egos and shit.
yeah, and it's not even like they're doing it for a long time. So it's not like the most senior guy, and I'm not talking about rank, I'm just talking about knowledge of the submarine, might have been there for 4 years.
Okay.
And if he has, that means he's on his way out. So it's this constant. So really what we rely on are processes, right? So sometimes
forming like the next ones to really keep the ship going.
Yeah, and so sometimes I get teased, and rightfully so, from other service members and sometimes civilians who know a little bit about submarines that some mariners have a procedure for everything, right? We have a procedure for flushing the toilet, which is true. Which is true because it's not a regular toilet. There's valves and it's
Okay.
But I always say, like, well, hold on. Like, we weren't robots. Meaning, yes, was there a procedure for everything? Absolutely. But no procedure can cover every situation. So you still have to be very thoughtful in what you were doing. But we do rely on processes and procedures to make sure, especially when it comes to operating the reactor, that we're doing it at the right time, all the time, period.
And I checked out your extreme operational excellence that you co-wrote with another officer. You talked about what businesses can learn from the nuclear subculture, and so what are the core principles that created success under those extreme pressures of the submarine?
Yeah, so again, thank you for your research. It's appreciated. It tells me how seriously you take this show, so thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate people that take the time to come on the show. So the least I could do is do a good research in that person.
Yeah, you did. That's awesome. So there's a couple, right? So we start with integrity, and integrity is often confused with its cousin, which is honesty, and they're not the same thing, right?
No.
Integrity on a submarine means doing the right thing all the time, even if no one's watching, and that is essential to what we do. And in fact, if you breach your integrity, you're probably going to get thrown off the submarine, even if it's over something small. In fact, my training program to get on the submarine as an enlisted guy, I was down in Orlando for what's called an A school, to teach me electronics essentially. And I was there for about a year, and I started the class with 18 students and we graduated 4. And it was hard academically, but that's not why we lost most people. Most people were lost over integrity violations. And I mean, like, copying someone's homework or being late to class and lying about why you were late. I mean, any breach of integrity, you were just gone. And so, that's kind of number one. We rely, and the reason that's so important is because everyone's job on a submarine
is important. Exactly.
Every single person, right?
Exactly.
And so if it's 2:00 in the morning and the mechanic down in engine room lower level has a decision to make, there's nobody around. One way would be a shortcut and you could get it done in 2 minutes. The other way would be a pain in the ass and would take 20 minutes. We want the guy who will do it the right way, take the 20 minutes. And if for some reason he believes that's not the right answer, then he needs to raise his hand and get a supervisor involved and make a deliberate decision about what we're going to do, right? So integrity is certainly number one. The next thing we talk about is a learning organization. The submarine community really embraces constantly getting better. And the only way, in my opinion, you can constantly get better is if one of your core values is learning and your actions are consistent with that, right? So you can say, we're committed to learning, we're continuing, we're committed to continuous improvement. In fact, every company I've ever seen says that.
Yeah.
That means nothing. But if you're
until you implement it, right. You put it on paper.
Anybody can say that. It's like safety, right? Every company in the world says that safety is their number one priority, but yet there's a lot of unsafe companies out there. So why is that? Well, your actions need to back it up. And when it comes to a learning organization, the analogy I always give is American football, right? So an average football team will spend 40 hours preparing for a football game. They'll spend 4 hours playing the game, and then they spend 8 hours watching the game. So they did a lot of preparation, some execution, and then a lot of evaluation on the back end. And they do all that to prepare themselves. And then on the back end, they want to get better for the next time they do it.
Absolutely.
And very few organizations do that. And I don't know. So, if you reduce that down mathematically, it's like, what am I trying to do here? It's like 1-10-2, right? So for every hour of execution, you're preparing for 10 hours and you're evaluating for 2. And I'm not saying that's the ratio that every company should use for every evolution,
but that's a good idea to start with.
Yeah, I know it's not the right answer. Like 0x0, right? Where it's like we didn't do any preparation, we just ran into it. And then we didn't really evaluate it. And again, the metaphor, or another metaphor, is like if you're at a restaurant and the waitress comes out with this big tray of drinks and she spills them all. Typically what you'll see is a group of people come over to help clean everything up, make sure she's okay, and then get back to work. And at no point is there like a discussion of like, what the hell happened? How did this happen? I mean,
that's so true.
Experienced enough? Was the floor slippery? Does she need to put less drinks on there? But and I'm exaggerating for effect.
But
the point is, the best organizations, and as a submarine, we were committed to it. Every organization will do investigations when things go wildly wrong, right?
For sure.
You do something to the environment, you hurt someone,
somebody dies, for sure. I hope you're doing something to change. But you guys make sure to, you don't need that chaos to let's build ourselves, or let's get better there. Compared to, for example, plane crashes. They really wait until chaos happens, and then now the investigation, and they amplify rules for all the other aviations because of that one plane. But shit needs to happen. But you guys are not waiting for shit to happen. You guys are just trying to build yourselves as a crew. I think it's a bit more like a UFC fighter, because he checks the fights in advance of how that guy fights, does a training camp of 3 months to do a 15 or 25-minute fight. And there's so much work that goes into it to make sure that you're the best possible when you're under pressure doing it.
Yeah, and a couple things. One is, to me, it's very, because I've seen this. Obviously, I saw it in the Navy for nearly 20 years, and then about 10 years in the civilian world. And the organizations that don't do that, who don't take the time and sit down and talk about something that's not horrible, right? I mean, nobody got hurt. We didn't break anything, but it didn't go as expected.
Exactly.
And if a couple other things had gone wrong, it would have been bad. If you don't practice learning from that, when you have to learn, no one knows how to do it. And some people hear that and think, well, what are you talking about? We don't know how to learn. Like, I'm telling you, like, I've been there. You sit around a table, and if people aren't used to it, they think it's some sort of legal investigation, that their jobs are at risk. They clam up. they don't say anything, and we don't learn anything, and we're not better as an organization. And one of the things that you learn very early in the Navy, at least in the submarine world, is, part of being a submariner is being brutally honest with yourself and others. If you make a mistake, you say, hey, I screwed up. And people will make mistakes, right? And I think that's like central to all of leadership is knowing that everybody is going to make mistakes. Like it's just a fact. Now, it doesn't mean that every time a person on a submarine makes a mistake, the ship is going to sink.
Yeah.
Because we have processes in place that protect us against that. So if I make a mistake and something we'll call bad as a placeholder, I can't think of a better word, but something untoward occurs. If you practice just talking about it and like we did in the Navy, like you just knew, like if you made a mistake, if you hide that or you're not truthful about what you were thinking and why you did what you did, you're being selfish to the person who's going to do that after you, because maybe they'll make the same mistake. Maybe we need to change the procedure. Maybe we need to change the process. Maybe there needs to be a second check. Maybe it should be a 2-person evolution and not a 1-person evolution, right? It robs us from the ability to learn how to do it better in the future. Right.
And I think this is just me thinking as a civilian there, because I had a DEA agent that came on that went on a Navy ship at a certain point, and he noticed that on the Navy ship, since it's so massive, it was a airplane carrier. So imagine how big that is. Mm-hmm. So and he noticed that there was so many different groups of people. It was not a whole team working to make this boat go forward, but I think it's because of the size. I think it's like a huge city. I go to Montreal, people don't give a shit about nobody, but my city we're 8,000. I go to a store, people hold the door, say hi. I think since you guys are like confined and in a small space, like might as well get along and figure it out and move on. So I think that
people.
So I think that's how the blueprint of teaching the guys were made there, because you're stuck with these guys. You can't even throw him overboard because you're underwater. So you got to deal with these people.
That's funny. Yeah, you're right. And I will tell you, if you deploy anyone you've deployed with, so you've done 6-7 months on a submarine with, you probably know as well as your own brother or sister. Like you just know everything about them because you see everyone. You know what people are like 5 seconds after they wake up. You know what they're like when they're hangry. You know what they're like when they're tired. You know what they're like when they're frustrated. You know what their primary means of conflict resolution is. You know what their triggers are. Although as an aside, you have to have pretty thick skin to be on a submarine, because especially as a new guy, you're going to get tested. And, on a submarine, we always say, like, if you have things that bother you, don't let anyone know that. Like, as soon as people know, like, let's say you just have a thing about repetitive noises, right? So if I'm doing this on the desk, I don't like that. You better damn never tell anyone that. Because I can guarantee you that if somebody knows that, people will do this on the desk every time you walk into a room. It just, and so you just got to keep your mouth
to test your limit.
It's just, you're constantly being tested. I remember my first my first shower on a submarine. I came out of the shower and all my clothes and towels were gone. And then I tried to get to my rack, and somebody had locked it, and then all the other berthing areas were locked, so I couldn't like grab someone else's towel.
Wow.
And they were just fucking with me, and they wanted to see how I would react. And I remember thinking, like, I'm standing there naked, and I remember thinking, like, all right, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. So I went back to the engine room naked, and I was like, all right, who's going to give me back my clothes, or we're going to wrestle for it? And they were immediately like, okay, here's your clothes, just go away, and they never mess with me again.
Yeah, but if you would have reacted like, "Come on, man, who fucking did this to me?" Oh, they would be like, "Oh, this guy every time we're gonna get him once a month at least." So for sure, giving that person that reaction, well, it just creates that bully to just want to do it in a way again there to tease you there for sure. But you, since we're nonchalant and like want to wrestle him naked right now, no, it's okay. Here's what blows.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk all day about the types of shenanigans that go on.
For sure, because a camaraderie in those environments, so like even the DA talked about that. Like these people are so family at a certain point that you're fucking with them on the daily, just to make this life of stress just a bit more interesting and fun at the same time of we're doing something great for the country. Though.
Yeah, and it's funny. I didn't realize it, but when I was on a submarine, I was a pretty gruff leader. And I didn't even know that I was. Like, if someone came to me like, hey, they would call me Eng for short for engineer. And, my response would always be like, what do you want? You're going to ruin my day today? What's your new, what do you, and it was just the way it didn't mean anything.
It breaks the ice. I think it breaks the ice.
Yeah. And when I left the submarine, the guys in my department actually made a plaque, which is in a moving box somewhere.
Nice.
With all the quotes that I had said.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow, that's really thoughtful.
I didn't even realize I said it. So for example, one of them that was on the plaque said, and I don't remember saying this, but one time I got really angry at someone and I said, if you do that again, I'm going to shoot your dog. And if you don't have a dog, I'm going to buy you a dog and then I'm going to shoot it.
It's still an amazing, thoughtful gift of the plaque. I honestly, man, I never thought somebody would think that to give to somebody. That is very, very thoughtful.
but when I got out of the military, and I knew I had to, like you're no longer on a submarine, but even with the knowledge of that, I still sometimes get surprised how sensitive people are in the civilian world, right? I remember one time
for sure.
It was like my first job as a civilian and something didn't go right. So I called a team meeting and it was pretty direct. But I didn't think I was mean. And like on a scale of 1 to 10, I was probably at a 3, or at least I thought I was. But then a couple people afterwards were like, you can't talk to us like that. And I was like what? Like 2 people quit, and I was just like, holy shit, like I gotta rethink this. Like I didn't, so it just, I find that it because there was this like acceptable level of, and it may have mattered because although it's different now, at the time when I served, submarines were all male. And maybe that had something to do with it. It became a little bit like a fraternity. I don't know. I just know that I had to make a lot of adjustments to my leadership style.
Well, I think it's because like since when you're on the ship there, people don't care about what word is said, of how it's said. It's the fact of what he said. Really, the sky's fucking blue. They don't give a fuck that there was a fuck in it. The sky's blue. Okay, that we know. So these people can deal with that though. But when you go to real life, if you say that, they're like, oh, why are you hostile with me? It's like, bro, can you get the fact? Did you get the message? But I know you need to choose different words for civilians because they won't be able to deal with that shit for sure. You said discipline listening is crucial. Can you walk us through how you learn to listen beneath the surface in both the military and civilian settings?
Yeah, it's another good question. So in the submarine, you cannot have a miscommunication. You just can't. If someone says, hey, go open that valve, and you go shut that valve, bad things could happen, right? Mm-hmm. So on the submarine, we have this kind of weird way of talking, and any order has to be repeated back, right? So if I say, let's say I'm working in the engine room, and
They
I
do
tell
the
them,
same in a plane. After an officer says something, the other one repeats it just to confirm. That is good,
yeah,
I think.
yeah. So, and it can get pretty complex. Meaning, let me just give you an example. Most nuclear evolutions are controlled from the control room in the engine room, right? And there's an officer in there who's in charge, and then there's somebody on the phones. There's sound powered phones, just the headphones and the talker, and they're talking to the space. Let's say engine room lower level.
Okay.
And you're going through a procedure, and the officer controls the procedure. Let's say the next step is open charging valve 37, right? So he'll say to the phone talker 2, engine room lower level, open charging 37. And then the phone talker will turn around and say, 2, engine room lower level, open charging 37. And then he says, engine room lower level, engine room lower level maneuvering, open charging 37. Then they'll repeat that back and say, open charging 37I. They'll open charging 37. Then they'll say, charging 37 is open. And the maneuvering will say, charging 37 is open, And then he'll say, engine room slow, charging 37 is open. That's for one valve. Right? So, the listening part.
It's to make sure there's no error.
That's
I
right.
think
That's right.
that's
There
it.
just can't be.
That's
And there just can't be. So you really have to be a good listener on a submarine. And that's for like what I just described as a very normal
Yeah.
operation.
So imagine a
When
one in
things-
panic there.
when things hit the fan, it's hard. Like we run a lot of drills on ourselves, right? So like we'll do steam line rupture drills. Like what happens if one of these steam lines just breaks? Flooding drills, what happens if we get flooding, fire drills. And when those happen, man, it is intense. And you got, especially as an officer, you got all these people talking to you, and you have to be able to figure out very quickly, okay, that's a priority. That is not, I'm going to second tier this, third tier this, and it just never stops. So it forces, and you never know, and this is true, I think, in life too, right? Like different people make reports differently, right? So there's a human nature tendency to latch on to the loudest, most emotional report. But usually that's not the way it works, right? Usually it's the kid in the corner who has some information and he says, officer deck, Romeo 3-2 is closing fast, or something like that. But it's in the midst of all this other stuff. And so you really have to learn to listen to what's being said to you and not how it's being said to you, right? Especially in intense moments.
Absolutely.
And then I think in the civilian world, it's different, but I think I have kind of two North Stars when it comes to listening. One is, and I know that, like Pulp Fiction said this, everyone says this, like, don't just wait for your turn to speak, but listen. And you stop formulating what you're going to say next. Just let your brain rest, listen to what's being said, and you'll have a response. Just trust yourself, but be present to that person, because it not only is it the way to absorb what they're having to say, it's the best way to make sure someone feels heard, right? So if I'm taking notes and checking email and on the phone, I probably can hear what that person says. Probably, right?
Yeah.
But they don't feel heard.
Exactly.
And then the second one, I actually learned, I did some improv for a few years just for fun.
Wow.
And the number one rule of improv is it's called yes and, right? So if someone says like, hey, Uncle Fred, you're just making it up, and you say, I'm not Uncle Fred, well, you just ruined that person's thing.
That's it. You double down on everything.
You just ruined it. Like she set up a thing where you're Uncle Fred, so you'd be Uncle Fred. So it's like, yes, I'm Uncle Fred, and meet my pet chinchilla, right?
That's it.
And so the yes and has helped me a lot. When I hear, even if I disagree with something that someone says, I try to validate what they say first, right? So if they say, hey, I really think we should do A, I say, yeah, I totally get your concern, and we should be focused on this threat as well. What are your thoughts on that? Or and so those are like kind of my two North Stars when it comes to listening.
Yeah, just the fact of acknowledging what the person says before answering, even even if you were like, "Oh no, we're doing this," but instead of being like, "Oh, that's really good," but what we need to do right now is that. Well, at least that the person feels heard and not just like, "Oh my God, okay, I just gotta do this." It really changes the dynamic of between a person and another there. You mentioned that success isn't just about having the loudest voice, like you just said. How did that philosophy play out in the submarine and apply now in your leadership?
I don't think we had a great way of dealing with it. I think there was a couple things that we did that were interesting. If we were going to do something relatively risky, we would set tripwires before we did the thing, right? So we would say, hey, if we meet any of these tripwires, we're going to abort the mission, right? So if visibility drops below 200 yards, if we have more than 25 contacts on the surface that we can see, if we hear a sonar from another ship that's greater than a certain number of decibels, right? So you set before you start all the things that are really important. And then if you meet one of those criteria, somebody in the control room will say tripwire, and then visibility less than 200 yards. So that word tripwire latches everybody on.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And can you do that in the civilian world? Yeah, it depends what you're doing, right? In power plants you can, in refineries you can. Can you do it in a retail store? Probably not. But it's still worth. It goes back to the preparation thing, right?
Yeah.
So before we do anything, we're going to talk about what is the worst case scenario here, right?
Yeah.
And not only what the worst case scenario is, and this is often lost on people. I know this is a little bit in the safety realm, but like, what is different today? Because most catastrophes somehow go back to something is different today than it was yesterday, right? So if you look at the Challenger space shuttle explosion in 86, I guess it was. It was really cold that day, and much colder than they ever predicted it to be. And then there were O-rings that weren't rated for that temperature, which turned out to be the reason why it exploded. But something was different that day. And so I always try to focus with my team, like when you're about to do something that's hazardous, not only do you need to talk about what can go wrong, but you have to talk about, I would call them upset conditions, but what is different today? Maybe there's a new guy on the crew they haven't worked with before. Maybe the customer is pushing you in terms with a sense of urgency to get the work done quicker than you're comfortable with. Maybe it's raining outside. All these things can play into the consequences of the day and need to be addressed, up front.
Absolutely. For the uncomfortable truth section, tell us an uncomfortable truth about being a submarine officer.
If you want a friend, get a dog.
That is good. What's a deeply uncomfortable truth that you had to face about your own bias?
I think, I grew up in a town in New Jersey that was primarily Irish and Italian. I really wasn't exposed to any other cultures other than the Irish and the Italian communities. So, in fact, if I'm being very honest, I didn't really have any friends of color, and my experience. We lived right next to my town was a town called Patterson, which is a very high crime rate city.
Yeah, that's where the DEA was working. That's so weird that you mentioned that.
Yeah, so it's a pretty rough place. And the only time in my whole childhood I ever worked with someone or ever encountered people my age of color was when there was some sort of criminal activity in the town, right? I mean, just a fact.
Yeah.
I mean, in 5th grade, was driving my bike home, and a bunch of kids about my age stopped me and tried to steal my bike. And so I didn't want to be racist, let's just say. Like, I don't have no desire to be,
for sure.
But I think I had some,
because it's never the skin color that creates that person, it's his environment. When we're kids, we assimilate that, oh, it's the color that goes with that because that's what we see, but because we don't have an understanding of life yet there.
Yeah, 100%. And so, that took a little bit of getting used to. I've never had a negative word to say about any group. I mean, every person I'm fine with, but there were some residual thoughts that I had, and that's not just true of minority groups. I mean, I never traveled to the Southeast, so meeting people from Mississippi and Alabama, and I have certain preconceived notions about what they're going to be like, and none of that's true.
No, we're often surprised.
Yeah, in fact, the one thing I've, not only from working with so many different people in the Navy, but also visiting so many different countries, the one thing I learned is that we're all the same. There really isn't that much of a difference between us, right? We want what's best for ourselves, our families. We want clean water, clean air. We want to take care of our children. Like, there's really not that much difference between any of us on this planet.
Exactly. There was a video that went viral of a homeless guy that explained that he takes containers and metal, and he put black, white, and yellow on the other one, and it's a silver container, and he puts water in it, and he's like, they're all the same. What's in it? What's contained? It's all the same contained inside there. It's just the exterior that you have a pre-knowledge, but you taste it. It all tastes the same because we're all human at the end of everything. How did you ever realize that you were? Did you ever realize you were maybe the villain in somebody else's story? And
that's another good question.
And how did you deal with that?
Yeah, so we were, when I got to my last submarine, the USS Key West, the engineering department was in bad shape. And we do, like, the Navy does this inspection every year, and they got like the lowest grade you could get on the inspection. I mean, it's still considered safe, but marginally.
Yeah.
And so I was given the assignment to be the chief engineer on that submarine, and it was a tough slog. And we were getting ready for the inspection, and I overheard actually it was a reactor operator. I overheard him say that he hopes that we got an average on the exam. And in retrospect, I understand what he was saying. He was saying, look, if you get too high of a grade, the expectations are too high that you'll continue that. And if you get too low of a grade, there's a lot of attention on you for that as well. He wanted to be right in the middle of the road, and I was not okay with that. I was like, we are going to knock this effing thing out of the park and send a message to the fleet. And that was my message. So when I heard him say that, a pretty influential guy in the department, I just lost my shit. And, I took him back in the back of the engine room and screamed at him, and then calmed down and explained. I asked him, I said, why do you think I want such a good grade on this? And we had a conversation about it. But I did remove him from the engine room for a couple of weeks, and he was washing dishes for a couple of weeks. So did I overreact? Yeah, I overreacted. Was I the bad guy in his story? Yep, I was the bad guy in his story. I know why I did what I did, but it was probably an overreaction.
Yeah, it's often in a retrospect when we relook at those kinds of things that we learn from them. I'm somebody that thinks, and everything I think and feel I say, and I lost some jobs because of it. And it's always in retrospect, because at that moment when I'm arguing and I'm gonna probably lose my job, I don't give a fuck because I'm right. But right when I get home, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, bro, why did I react that way? And it's always in a retrospect. We got so much a train of knowledge that hits us after there. What's an uncomfortable truth about human nature that your career has shown you?
I think people avoid pain more than they seek out pleasure. And as a consequence, most people are very risk averse. That's not my personality at all. In fact, I'm pretty comfortable with risk. And risk takes all types of forms and fashions. Right? It doesn't mean jumping off out of an airplane. It can mean even just changing up a procedure, because yes, this one's worked for 20 years, but it kind of sucks and we could do better if we did this, that. Yeah, it's a risk. And I feel like most people are afraid of anything that could potentially bring them pain in their life, even if there's all this upside. It's not, and research has supported this, right? So like $5 loss at a casino hurts more than a $5 win at a casino. That feels good.
That is so true. Let's talk about the echo chamber effect. With so much division nowadays, how do we get out of the echo chambers and engage with new ideas without feeling like we're compromising our values?
That's another great question. So, I think it's particularly relevant today because I don't think we've ever been this divided.
Yeah, me neither.
And I'm worried about it because, without getting into politics too much here, unless that's your thing, we're going to be okay. Meaning, like, no matter how you feel about the current administration, America's going to be just fine, right? But we're going to be left with each other. Meaning, there's no matter how you feel about the situation, there's 75, give or take, millions of people who disagree with you, and they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And neither is the other group, right? So we got to figure out a way to talk to each other. And what I have emphasized in the various platforms is curiosity, right? We need to bring back curiosity. Like, so, for example, my wife and I are on different sides of the political fence, right? But I don't think she's a stupid person, and she doesn't think I'm a stupid person. In the course of our day-to-day activities, she never catches me doing something that's idiotic, right? So we respect each other's intellect, but then when it comes to politics, it's like, oh, what are you, crazy, and you're brainwashed? It's like, oh, calm down. Like, it'd be better to understand. Like, what I tell people is, have you ever had a political conversation with someone where they said to you midway through the conversation, hey, you know what? You're right and I'm wrong. Thank you for correcting me.
People are gonna say no. That's so rare. Oh my God.
I mean, what, 1 in a million?
Yeah.
So, but then why do we communicate as if that's what we're trying to achieve? Like, it's never going to happen. But yet that's the way we talk. Like, we're trying to convince the other person that they're wrong. Well, that's never going to work. The only way people change their minds is if they change their own minds, right? And so we can ask questions that are not bad faith questions, like, how could you be so brainwashed? Like, that's a bad faith question, right? But a good faith question of, like, tell me more. Like, tell me, why are you, why do you feel the way you feel?
Like, what policy do you like of this president? Like, something, tell me your opinion. So you get more yourself an understanding of why he's basing his opinion on that. And that makes you like less critical of him, because there's a foundation of why he's feeling that. And that's very important.
I mean, if you put me in a room of 10 people and everyone had a different opinion on something than me, I may not change my opinion, but I'm probably gonna listen because I'm outnumbered 10-1. Like,
for sure.
What are they thinking that I'm not thinking, right?
Yeah.
That's 10 people.
Yeah. That's a lot of knowledge you can gain.
Well, but think about it. So, with 75 million people, and I don't mean it's right or left, right? Because it's about the same number of votes. They're all idiots. All 5 million of these people. Like, how is that possible? It's not possible. right?
Exactly.
So it's coming back to respecting our neighbors, respecting our family and friends, and being curious, and just give it up. Stop trying to win political arguments. Like, it's not helping anyone. It's not helping you. It's not helping them. Just stop it. And I think what I've learned from, because I've kind of been studying this for about a year or so now, and I think what I've learned, I know what I've learned, is that when people talk politics, especially today, they're not really talking politics. They're talking about their own identity. Like, somehow their perception of the situation, the country, the whatever, is tied to their personal identity. And so we could be talking about immigration, and the words sound like we're talking about immigration, but we're actually not. Like, we're defending our own egos, right? I mean, we're defending, like your brain thinks it's in a street fight to protect itself, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm being attacked.
Yeah.
And once you realize that, like, this person's not talking about immigration, they're just not. It doesn't mean they can't have an opinion on it, but that's not why they're so worked up. They're worked up because they feel like you're attacking them as a person. And so, in fact, it's funny. I've been on a decent amount of podcasts of late, and one of the podcasts that I was on was a couples therapy podcast, and I have zero experience in that. But there was a man and a wife who ran the podcast, and someone had seen one of my YouTube videos and thought it would be good to kind of discuss that. But it is, I mean, it is kind of interesting how, like, kind of applicable that was. Like, it wasn't completely off the radar from what we just said just now, right?
Yeah.
Like and a good North Star for me that I'll share has been, in all cases, seek to first understand before being understood, right? Like,
That's so
you
true.
start launching into all the reasons why you think a certain way,
Yeah.
you may feel good, but no one's listening to you.
Exactly. I like that. There's a line in your work about the hidden cost of winning arguments, when we all think that the goal is to win an argument. You said that winning an argument isn't always the goal, people. What's your take on why so many people today are so obsessed with winning these conversations at all costs, instead of maybe extracting information of the other person?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I mean, and I think the question you raise expands the topic, right? So it's not just politics anymore. I think, if I'm, I have people that work for me, and someone says, "Hey, Matt, I think, we have a situation. I think I'm going to do A. A is going to work," and I'm thinking to myself, "No, B is better." Well, if I have to assess how much better is B. Because if B isn't that much better, maybe take the L on this, and let that person do. It's safe. It's okay. It might not be the A+ solution, but your relationship with that person has improved, and you've showed that you trust them to do their job. If every time I'm constantly, because I've been around longer, so I probably do know a better way of doing something, not because I'm smarter, just because I've seen this a lot, right?
Yeah.
But that's exhausting to other people, and it's demoralizing, right? So you can win an argument, and you can even be right and win the argument. And I think it was Andy Stanley who said, don't ever exchange the effort to be right versus the effort to make a difference, right?
Oh,
So
wow. I like it.
if you're a know-it-all, you're never going to make a difference in your team.
No.
You're just not. I mean, people shut you down, and you may be right, and you may know a lot, and people will listen to you. But if you think that you're going to, become a leader that people talk about 10 years later, and be the type of leader where your people stay in touch with you after the fact, and you're not going to, know-it-alls don't get that privilege.
No, not at all. You talk about exposing the blind spots that derail decision making. How do you personally train yourself and others to spot those blind spots that derail decision making?
Oh man, you're good at your job, man. Another great question.
Well, I appreciate it.
the most dangerous piece of information or knowledge gap is when we don't know what we don't know, right? Like I know I don't know how to cook lasagna. I know that I don't, right? Um, so if someone said, "Hey, can you cook some lasagna?" I'd say, "Nope, don't know how to do that." Right? I know that I don't know that. But then there's things I don't know that I don't know, right? So, like I could be driving. I live close to Detroit. I could be driving in some area of Detroit that I really shouldn't be in, but I don't know that. But I don't know that I don't know that, right?
Yeah.
So those are your blind spots. And I think there's two things about blind spots. One is we all have them. And it's really hard to ask people what our blind spots are. Most people won't tell you because they don't want to hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
And the people who do tell you will hurt your feelings. So you're going to get your feelings hurt if you want to know what your blind spots are. And then the second part it's kind of counter to the first part, but I'll say it anyway. If your child brought home a report card and it was 4 A's and a C, what are we going to be talking about with that child?
That's C, not the A's for sure.
Which is ridiculous, right?
Yep.
I mean, what did Einstein get in poetry? What grade did he get? I have no idea. But who cares? His gift to the world was math and science.
Yeah.
And I think we spend so much time in our organizations trying to strengthen our weaknesses or individuals' weaknesses. And it's like, look, if this guy's not good at administration, you're never going to make him an administrative star. So why not just leverage his skills, in whatever they are, so that he can be the very best at it, and then
passionate about it.
Whose skill set is that. So
absolutely.
Now that doesn't protect my blind spots, but it protects me from the blind spots of my team, right? Like, I know you have a blind spot here, and instead of trying to improve it, like we're a team here. Like if it was just me and you stranded on a desert island, well, then I guess we got to deal with blind spots, right? But we're not. We have a team here. So that's kind of one way that I deal with it. But in terms of my own blind spots, I think it's just a lot of self-reflection. Anytime something doesn't go quite right, small or large, I always clean up my side of the street first. Before I blame someone else. It's like, okay, well, let's think about this, Matt. What could you have done differently? And that's just not I do that in my marriage, when something doesn't go right.
That's the way to do it.
Complain about anything. I make sure my side of the street's clean. Was there anything at all I could have done differently?
That is so solid. I had a girl on, and she said about relationships. Like a lot of people in relationship are like, "Oh, my husband doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. Oh, he's not happy when he comes home." Instead of being like, "What can I do to make this relationship better?" It is like she's like, "Sam, right when I started doing that, wow, it changed everything. It changed everything. He started becoming the person because I'm doing my part, and the person on the other side is going to start doing his if you did yours. But if you're like, oh, you should do this and that, sometimes a person's going to react in the other way and push back like, oh, fuck off, and be even more pissed. And so it just creates hostility. So understanding those is fucking crucial.
If I could add just one more thing to
that
topic, if I could. I don't mean to be self-promoting here, but I did it matches with this conversation here. I did just write a book on that topic, and the book is called Actualization. And in fact, I have it right. I have a copy of it right here. What the seed of this book was the exact thing that you just said.
Yeah.
I about 10 years ago, I went through a divorce, and I was kind of reflecting on things, and I read something that changed me forever. And then was eventually the reason I wrote that book. And the thing that I heard was, it was about dating, and it said, stop looking for Mr. or Mrs. Right and start becoming Mr. or Mrs. Right.
There you go.
And I was like, holy shit.
So simple, but wow, eye-opening.
Yeah. Like even and so where that kind of expanded to was this thought about our goals, about so I'll use myself as an example. Like my goal is to become an acclaimed nonfiction writer, right? I want people to know my name. I want my books to be sold everywhere. I'm old enough to just admit that that's my goal, right? It just is.
Yeah, and there's no problem with that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, some people, even myself at a younger age, don't really want to say what we really want, but I'm 51 years old. That's what I want, right? Um, but I'm starting to believe that our goals aren't really what we should be focused on. Meaning, it's kind of like my goal is to find Mr. or Mrs. Right. Like, okay, well, that's a good goal, but the way to go about it is to work on yourself, not trying to obtain something, right? So instead of me worried about, well, what book is going to be on the New York Times bestseller list, just start to become the author that you want to be, right? Like, so what types of things would this person do? Would they write every day? Yeah, probably. Would they have discussions like this with interesting people? Yeah. Would they help out aspiring writers who haven't published yet? Yeah. So just start doing all the things that like the hero in your movie would do, and those goals will just come naturally,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And instead of like swimming upstream, because sometimes people say, well, start with a smaller goal. And I was like, you don't need a smaller goal, you need a bigger self, right? You got to
Wow.
build yourself up so you have the strength to carry those goals. It's possible, like going back to the Mr. and Mrs. Right thing. It's like a car, it's like a dog chasing a car. Like if you're not ready for it, okay, fine, you catch it. Now what?
Hmm.
You're not ready to be in a relationship with Mrs. Right. So that really shouldn't have been your goal.
Exactly. Building yourself is so important, and no matter if it's your career, relationships, and everything, there is the biggest construction you're going to do in your life there. But a lot of people focus on so the wrong things, when just being a decent human being yourself and building your knowledge and understanding of others, why people are pieces of shit. It's not because that person's a piece of shit, it's because his perception of what he lived through and everything creates this person. But a lot of people can't even comprehend that kind of stuff. You talk about the importance of seeing the gray areas, because a lot of people are like the black and white there, and a lot of people argue that there's always no middle ground. But in your work, you stress the importance of this nuance. Why do you think this nuance is so critical in conversation, and how can we reintroduce this to people there?
Great, another great question. A tough question. I think the older I get, the more I see shades of gray, right? Like when I was younger, I was definitely more black and white. And I think that's pretty typical. I think the more you experience in life, the more you realize, everything's shades of gray. It just is. I know, I guess we can come up with a couple things that are black and white, but not many.
Yeah,
Um, and I don't really know. I don't have a great answer to your question in terms of like, what do we do with that information? I think, there's a couple things that I have learned to mitigate that.
yeah,
So people like certainty, right? So if you can give people certainty, they like that. And in
yeah,
fact, sometimes leaders who are overly confident, more confident than they should be, actually do better, simply because they're able to project this sense of, look, I know it all, just follow me, and it's certainty, right? People latch on to that certainty, and oftentimes that's kind of a black and white. So if I'm the boss or the leader and I come into a room and we're going to talk about a problem, and I see this all the time, right? The person says, hey, we have a problem. I've seen this before. We're going to do X, Y, and Z, but I really respect your guys' opinions. And, I need to hear you tell me why I'm wrong. What's your input? And they think that they're doing the right thing, but they've already poisoned the well
yeah,
by saying what they thought. So, I've learned to start with the youngest guy in the room and say, how would you solve this? And then just go
Oh
around. And
shit. Okay.
then at the end, I can say, okay, well, thanks for your input. Listening to all of what you guys said, and I appreciate that. I think this is what we're going to do, right? And
Everybody feels like that they had a part in that decision.
we're more likely to draw out the gray areas, right? Because
Absolutely.
if the leader says, hey, we're going to do this, everyone says, yeah, I think that's a good idea. And then you could convince yourself that It is a good idea.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you convince yourself, you know, it's kind of like convincing yourself that you've become funnier as you get more senior. Because people laugh at your jokes. No one ever laughed at your jokes before. You didn't get funnier. You know, people are just kind of telling you what you want to hear.
Yeah, yeah. Your idea of mental judo is quite brilliant. How did you develop the skill and of shifting perspectives without creating this resistance in most people?
Yeah, I think it's about really lowering people's defenses by staying, you know, at the risk of repeating myself here, staying by staying curious, right? So um, dropping the defense of I want to be right, I'm going to be right, you know, this is my ego at stake, and just relaxing and listening to people. And you know, there's tons of ways um, to get people to reconsider their own opinions without shoving it down their throat, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you can there's a series of skills, and I wrote a small book about this called Mental Judo.
yeah. The art
Um,
of graceful influence.
that's right, that's right,
That's
and
it.
it's a small book, but it has about 7 different strategies, like questions, right? So, for example, we say, um, you know, we say, um, hey, what if we did this? What's the worst that could happen? What could go wrong? Like if we did this and it was the wrong decision, in 3 months from now, what would we be saying? What would
Mhm.
we regret? And let the other person say that, right? Sometimes just silence, just listening and just saying, hmm, interesting, right? Because
Yeah.
all you really want to do, it reminds me of that movie Inception, right? All you really want to do in these heated conversations is just plant a seed. That's the best you can do. And then let that seed grow in that person's head. And they'll never say, oh, I changed my mind because of Matt DiGeronimo.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they'll say, oh, I just changed my mind on this topic because and you'll never hear you'll never get credit for it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
And that's fine, right? That's not, you know, that's not your goal. It's never my
Yeah.
goal, right? Um, so that would be kind of um, my thoughts.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I checked out your book because of that, and it reveals like a powerful yet I can't even say it, subtitle like approach to this influence, and it doesn't like rely on just the charisma that most people would think, or the loud opinions, or somebody having authority. I think why you used it as the martial arts of judo, it's because judo is all about redirecting and keeping the energy at the same time. So I think that's how you why you called
Yeah.
it that mental. Yeah, I kind of figured that out because I like martial arts. I was like, okay. So for the critical thinking part, thinking outside the box, name 2 things people should try at least once in their life.
Um, at number one, I think we should address our fears head on at least once, right? So I'm all right, you used to be pretty fearful of heights. So, you know, what I do, I went skydiving, you know, and like just to say like, look, I'm gonna tackle this friggin' thing, you know, and what's the way I can think of? Like go jump out of an airplane. Um and there's a lot of power in that, right? Because most of our fears are irrational, right?
Yeah,
And we know that, but yet we still can't quite get over it. So
yeah.
for me, exposure to our fears is very powerful. Um, you know, the other thing, I mean, it's a tough question. If I thought about it for a long time, I'd probably have better
Yeah, yeah,
answers. But
sure.
I think, you know, the other thing, you know, that I would highly recommend people try is, and we kind of talked about it, is, you know, take something that you're so passionate about and do your best to present the other side, right? So, for example, like if I'm very anti immigration, or
Do devil's advocate. That's what
yeah,
you.
yeah, but force yourself to say, okay, hold on a second. Let me just for my own benefit make all the cases why I'm wrong. Just no one's listening. I'm just do it. And in fact, I think Jeff Bezos from Amazon does this. Who knows? I mean, everything you read you can't trust. But
yeah,
I read that when Amazon has kind of a disagreement between two groups, that's what Jeff Bezos makes them do. They start the meeting. Each group has to state the argument of the other.
Okay, yeah.
Before they start.
I learned like doing debates that's the best way to do it. Understand completely his point of views of how he's going to come up. So it helps you become a better communicator at the same time. What's an example of a situation where thinking outside the box helped you solve a problem that others probably couldn't?
Yeah, so I kind of pride myself in being a creative thinker, so I should have plenty of examples.
Yeah, for sure.
On the Submarine, which is probably the best place to start, we had a pump fail, and as a result, we lost the ability to make water. Right, so obviously it's pretty significant, right?
For a huge crew, water. You need water. Yeah,
people need water. Cooks need water to cook, and the mechanics were saying like, "Look, we can't fix it." And I remember saying like, "Look, that's not an option, man. Like, you can't just say you can't fix it. Like, we're in the middle of nowhere. We have no water. Like, we're fixing this fucking thing." And we ended up using soda cans that we found in the garbage. And then machining the aluminum flat, and then carving out these little pump shims that we put on the shaft of the pump, because the ones that were manufactured got all shredded, and it worked.
Wow.
And it was, to me, I mean, I knew we'd figure it out eventually.
Yeah.
We're smart guys, but to me, the biggest benefit of that was seeing the department's realization that like, holy shit, we did that, we did that, and it just kind of raised their confidence to think outside the box. And
like, no matter what, we got this and we can figure it out.
Yeah, and I deal with that in the civilian world all the time, and I always ask this horrible question, but I ask it anyway. When someone says, "Hey, we can't do that," and I say, "Let me ask you a question. If your family's life was at stake,
could you do it?"
And they say, "Well, of course." Okay, well, so then don't say it's not doable. You could say, "Hey, this is too much work." The
that
juice
makes sense.
Isn't worth the squeeze, or whatever you want to say. But don't tell me you can't do it. You could do it, right?
Oh, that's so good. Can you share an instance where your intuition or gut feeling made you to do a particular decision in your life?
Yeah, so I mean, joining the Navy was a gut feel thing. I had no real evidence to support it being a good idea, but I did it anyway. I'm definitely more of a gut feel kind of guy. I mean, can be analytical when I need to, but my experience is that most people overthink things.
Yeah, that's true.
The vast majority of things we decide to do just don't matter. They just don't.
Yeah.
And so being able to know like what matters and then putting your attention into that. In fact, I've written about something called decision fatigue, where you don't realize it, but over the course of the day we make so many decisions, and that tires our brain out. So it doesn't leave the mental energy that we need for the things that really matter, right? That's why you see people like President Obama, for example, only wore blue and gray suits, right? And his wardrobe is very limited, and he talked about it. And he said, I didn't want to make a decision in the morning about what to wear, right?
Yeah, I had too many already, yeah.
Yeah, and then you have people who like eat the same meals all the time, right? And and what I have found, and I don't do that or the clothes extreme, but anything we can do to simplify our lives, even make them boring, if you will, in the routine parts of our lives, will pay off huge benefits for the things that we really want to put our mental horsepower to.
Absolutely, that is so true. What do you think is a harmless lie society tells people that you think is seriously long-term damage?
Um, Man, another good question. I think I and this is a hot take here.
Here we go.
I think we're telling ourselves too much that you're fine just the way you are.
Oh yeah, that is so true.
Meaning, like, I get it. We there's a lot of things about ourselves, the things that we cannot change, that you're fine. Like, don't
Yeah.
worry about it, right? Like,
Yeah.
like I've had bad skin my whole life, right? There's nothing I could do about it. And at some point you just say, like, that's it. Like, that's, and I'm going to love myself regardless of that. But when people say, hey, Matt, you kind of have a temper, well, that's just who I am. I think that's bullshit. I think we're losing the ability. Everyone seems to be a victim of something, instead of just saying, like, look, what are you in control of? Go take control of that and stop making excuses for why you can't. And I've observed that more and more society is supporting that victimhood and supporting that idea of, like, oh, you didn't do good in school. Oh, don't worry about it. Just you're fine. Just, it's like, well, maybe you're not fine. Maybe you do have to go back to school, or maybe you do have to find a job. Maybe you do have to work hard at this. Maybe you have to work harder because you're not as talented. A lot of the things that I think launched our country's success were about working harder to be better, and I'm seeing us lose that a little bit.
That is so true. My goodness, a lot of people nowadays like just think that they don't need to learn more, or like you said, like oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, bro. Well, that mindset at the start, well, I'm quite sure you're not gonna build shit for sure.
Yeah, I think it was Henry Ford who said, whether you think you're right or you think you're wrong, you're right. Oh, excuse me. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Okay, yeah. Language can influence way more than action, and a lot of people can't figure that out there. Can you share an example of how a small shift in wording can make a huge impact?
Yeah, so again, this is kind of a submarine example, but I've carried it with me. I guess the best way to say it is when I screwed it up. When I was a junior officer on the USS Hampton, I was in charge of the reactor protection systems, and we had a problem. It needed to be fixed. There was a couple ways to fix it, and I was asked to go to the captain to brief him on what the problem is and how we're going to fix it. So I was, 24 or something at the time, and like go into the captain's stateroom, and I say, Captain, here's the problem, and we could do A, B, or C to fix it. What would you like to do? And I got grabbed by the scruff of my uniform out of the captain's stateroom by the engineer, and he said, don't ever talk to the captain like that. And I had no idea what the hell he was talking about.
Yeah.
He's like, what did I do wrong? He's like, you don't ask the captain what he wants to do, because now you're making him the single point failure. He's supposed to be the backup to the system. So you say, hey, based on the information I have, I intend to do B. And the captain knows he's in charge. You don't have to remind him.
Yeah.
If he doesn't like it, he'll stop you and he'll say, no, I think we should do A. But my point is, getting people to state, I intend to do blank instead of can I do blank is a very, very small adjustment to our language, but it makes
it changes everything
in the world.
Oh yeah.
Because if someone comes to me and says, hey, I intend to do blah, 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 and I say, great, thanks for letting me know.
Congratulations.
Now it's on them.
Yeah.
Like exactly. They own it. It was their idea. They're the ones who said it. Now they got to figure it all out.
Mm-hmm.
Versus saying, hey, can I do this? And I say yes. It's like, okay, well, the engineer gave me permission, so I guess I'm fine. No. This was your idea.
Exactly. I got four more, and they're all about like some of your different books there, because I went through checking them all out, and it was very interesting because I was thinking before checking them out that it was more derived in one direction, but actually you got books about a couple things, so I really appreciated that. You wrote a book, "Suck, We Struggle, Therefore We Are." You talk about the value of discomfort, and this is why the show exists, because uncomfortable truths is where you grow at a certain point. What's the biggest lesson, struggle that taught you personally?
I think it was a realization that everything that we do, we're gonna suck at first.
Exactly. Me, somebody that's like, oh, I don't want to do that, I'm not good at it. Well, it's not by staying on the bench, bro, that you're gonna become a Michael Jordan. I can tell you that. What the hell?
That's right. And you have to get through the suck. You always, there's no way around it. There's no easy button. There's no sure. And the metaphor that I sometimes use is like, if you've ever used a squeezed bottle of mustard, when you first squeeze it, all this junk comes out, right? That's the suck. And there's no way to get to the mustard without getting through that crap. And so, for some people, they get that then they say, oh, I suck at this, and they put it back on the counter. And it's like, what were you doing, man? You were so close.
Yeah, because everything he's gonna try it that one time, he's gonna suck.
And then they say 3 months later, they try it again. And the same thing happened. Oh, I suck still. It's like, dude, no, you got to hang in there. Just get through the suck. Everyone has a finite amount of suck in them. Now, don't get me wrong. If you and I both decided to become, singers, one of us probably has a naturally better voice than the other one. But that doesn't mean that I can't work hard and compensate for that, right? My suck may be longer than your suck, but it still exists.
And we both suck still at the beginning. Yeah. So it's like failure. Failure always gonna happen, people. So getting used to it and comfortable when it happens, because it will happen. It just helps you adapt and move on way easier. You've written multiple books and made tough calls in your life. What's been the hardest decision in your journey, and what helped you go through it?
There's been a lot of them. I think the one that I'll share, it's kind of a long story, but I'll try to make it brief. I was on a submarine and we were getting ready to get underway, but it was just a training exercise. It wasn't like a mission or anything. And a bunch of our seawater pipes had failed an inspection, meaning the pipe wall width was too thin.
Okay.
And the technical manual said, hey, if it's this thin, which ours were, do not go out to sea, right? Fix this first. And this was going to be our captain's last underway before he changed commands. So he really wanted it. But yet my mechanics were like, what are we doing? Like, how come we're always being told to follow procedure and, believe the source documents. And now when the captain doesn't want it, it doesn't matter, and I probably hurt my career a little bit by doing this, but I don't care. It was, I challenged him, and I challenged the captain, and I said, hey, look, I got to talk to you about this. I mean, there's a lot of people on this boat that are concerned about this. And he just got pissed off. He wasn't the type of guy to reflect with me, but it did force us to get more technical resources to bear on the issue. And the subject matter experts said, no, you can't go out to sea like this.
It sucks in a way that like you felt like you couldn't just tell him what you said there, because in an airplane it's completely different. If you feel like the pilot is not realizing the danger that he's in, the other one has 100% the call of taking control right away because of that, or giving his opinion out loud. There should never be oh, I don't want to say this because of his authority. And it's weird that in a submarine, it's like that a bit, because I don't think growth is the best. I don't think that's the best way to get growth out of your crew.
Yeah. And I don't think it's fair to say that that's what submarines were like. I think it's fair to say that's what that captain was like.
Okay, yeah.
But I knew that, and therefore I knew, and chances are, if we had gone out to sea for a couple of days, it would have been fine, probably, right?
but you
But
never know.
I didn't write the manual. Like
Yeah,
I'm not the one who said, do not go out to sea in this circumstance.
yeah. Check the rule book of 1942, not mine.
Yeah.
I got two more last ones. In breadcrumbs, you offer short leadership insights. If you had to pick just one breadcrumb for someone to ensure their leadership voice, what would it be?
I think I'd go with the 20-60-20 rule. And that is, if you have 10 or more people, 2 of them, or 20%, will hate everything about you. They will hate your ideas. They will hate your face. They will hate your dog. They just will hate you, right? 2 of them will love you. And it doesn't matter what you say, even if your ideas are stupid, they're going to follow them. And they don't need any supervision. They're just going to go do their jobs. And then it's the 60% in the middle that we really have to concern ourselves with, right? And the two extremes are traps.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people latch on to these people that are griping and bitching about things because they just can't help it. It's like if you're a public speaker and there's somebody in the front row who's doing this. There could be 1,000 people in the audience. You're like, what is going on with that guy? Yeah, so that's a trap, though, because you're never going to change those people's minds.
Exactly. They're stuck on one side and the other one are stuck on the other. It's that 60% that you can flip, though.
Exactly. And unfortunately, this is not true everywhere, but what I've seen is that the people who bitch tend to be a little bit more charismatic. I don't know why that is. They just tend to have a little bit stronger of a gravitational pull for this 60%. So if you do nothing, it is my belief that 60% will go over to the bad place, right? And if you're so focused on, or the other trap is saying, well, this 20% love me. I must be doing something right. Why can't I get the other, 80%? It's like they would love a coffee cup who was in charge. Like, don't flatter yourself, right? So it's that 60% that you really got to focus on.
Absolutely. And I really I checked out your one of the last books there, the Deer Hunter. I really I didn't expect that from you. Like from seeing your background and everything, I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I didn't see a lot of books like this because I'm a book collector myself, and I never seen a book like that. So your book, Deer Hunter, feels so deeply personal. What was the most important lesson you hope your son or any young man takes away from these letters? Because what you do in the book, you take us through like the life of a father and a son, that what advice you would give him through his life through the book, and that is really beautiful.
Thank you. I mean, I think the number, I think it's 50 letters in there, so I'm not saying I'm going to remember all of them, but I think the one that stuck with me the most was the one about dealing with your inner critic. And I think, ironically, the title of that was Allow Yourself to Suck, right? So it's a similar topic that we were just talking about. But no matter what you're doing, I mean, I write about it from a vantage point of a writer, but it's true for anyone. You're always going to have that voice inside of you that says, you suck, why are you doing this? You're never going to amount to anything. You're wasting your time. And we all have it, right?
Yeah.
And I've spent decades trying to wrestle this thing. And that letter just kind of tackled how I've had some success. I'm not perfect yet, but and it kind of focused on almost the mental judo thing with your inner critic, right? Like, it's like, look, I know I suck. You don't need to tell me. Just go bother someone else. Like, yep, I suck. And I'm going to do this anyway, and it's going to suck. And he comes back, I know what you're doing. You can't fool me, blah, blah, blah. Yep. You're right. Just keep doing it. Like, whatever it is you want to do, you just got to keep showing up.
Absolutely.
And that's the hardest part. I mean, it's somewhat ironic, right? That, it's not the best people that succeed. It isn't. We like to think that the best writers are the ones who are published, the best singers are the one who get the contract. It's not. It's the people who don't give up.
Yeah, exactly. And because the luck has a lot to do with it. And
100%.
it's just that harder you work, maybe luckier you get, but it's not always the best one that gets it there. I want to thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you coming on. Where can everybody find you and find your books?
Okay, thanks, Sam. Right now I'm mostly on Substack. So if you search my name on Substack, I'm pretty easy to find. I write a publication called Beyond Platitudes. And that's kind of where I've settled in terms of my writing. And then all my books are available on Amazon. And if you search my name, Matt DiGeronimo, there's not too many of us out there. So
No.
you'll find my author page pretty quickly.
Perfect. So thanks again for coming on, and guys, have a great weekend.
Thanks, Sam. This is great.